Vikings and anime aren't two things that usually go together, but here we are talking about a Viking anime, Vinland Saga. It follows the story of Thorfinn, a young child to the greatest warrior in the Danish Empire, Thors. Well, former warrior. Eventually their peaceful life is disrupted as Thor's past catches up with him, forcing him back into war with his stowaway young child. What follows forces Thorfinn down a dark path of revenge, endless combat, and somehow winding up in a bit of a royal civil war, centered around the rest of the cast. He travels with Askeladd, and eventually a Danish prince, the former slowly revealing his past, which contrasts greatly to his life as a well-driven pilot, and the latter his plans for humanity's future after some battlefield enlightenment. This is another one of those recent anime that shows off just how far modern animation can go, featuring all these stunning aspects of the Middle Ages European landscape. From the cliffs of Wales to the snow-capped mountains of Iceland, no shot will leave you wanting more, whether it's a bloody intense fight scene, or the wartime contemplation of God's will. It has a distinct art style, choosing to go with a more realistic touch than usual, accentuating the aged or scarred natures of the cast. Some of the faces can be a bit off at times, but this isn't very much. If they're going for joy, disgust, or a solemn feel, the characters generally reflect their personalities well, and even with the majority Nordic-natured cast, everyone still feels original and personal. The story flows well a majority of the time, although some of the same plot notes are hit a couple too many times when it comes to Thorfinn, but this is actually natural to his motives. In that way, its storytelling method is something of its own, where the main character's actions contrasted against some of the rest of the cast put him closer to a villain than anything else. This is one of the big strengths, with a cast comprised of protagonists who, for most of the run, are morally grey at best. A majority of the time, they're actively engaging in some pretty fucked up stuff. Not just theft or lying, but burning down or slaughtering whole villages. This is 11th century Viking tales, so it wouldn't make sense for a bunch of ethically sound characters to be running around and saving the day, and personally I love series where we don't follow a hero. The opening arc with Thors is where we see most of the good side of humanity, and the remainder is more to do with watching much worse men handle his ideals. That's not to say it's all gloom and doom, however. Even though the characters are pretty morally terrible, they're all still likable in their own ways, and the series is super entertaining to watch. This is one of the rare times I knocked out a whole 24 plus in a day and a half. You get swept up in the action and excitement before they pull you back down to earth with these somber moments of the main character's devilish actions. This is a good parallel when we're following Vikings who rejoice at the idea of battle and all its anguish because it means they can enter Valhalla. This is something seen often in episodes, and getting swept up in the grand acts of war strengthens the dark idea of these men worshipping death by combat. Aside from the small issue with Thorfinn's pacing, the rest of the plot is one of those nice gradual ramp-ups to something you never expected. Just like Thorfinn, we're gonna get swept up in this ride that goes from humble beginnings to holy fuck, how are we here? It's fantastic when series actually develop up to massive action rather than just throwing you into it. It can work, but this is a natural flow to fit with the plot, and it makes some eventual philosophical revelations even more powerful after themes have had room to be strengthened over time. And that's the last thing I want to go over here, is strong ass themes. Just like Psycho-Pass, I adore it for its extremely well done plot and characters, but love it for the theme and philosophy. The main characters all exude their own or exhibit the philosophy of someone else. The core ideals can be found in single lines, but developed prior to and after their stating in much deeper acts. And just like the story follows a non-traditional method, all these philosophies are counterintuitive to traditional definitions, which is a very fresh note. Besides an amazing scene after the halfway point, they don't even slow anything down or take entire episodes to yell these ideas at you or anything. It's a perfect coexistence of action and theme that can offer something great, whether you want raw Akame ga Kill style action, or the deep contemplations of Cowboy Bebop, or something in between. If you're like me and want to go even deeper into the meanings behind the series, I'll hopefully have a video discussing those core ideals out soon. I would talk about the downfalls of the series, but well, there really aren't many. The issue with Thorfinn's repeated plot note isn't terrible, and there's a few ideas that seem like they'd received some attention and just kind of dropped off, but that's about it. Most of the time I would take a note saying, if this happens, this series will be gold, and then the exact thing would happen, which with my love of non-traditional stories and characters, doesn't happen often. If you're like me or not, I think there's something here for everyone. The only caveat is you have to be able to handle some pretty violent action. Not berserk levels of fucked up, just some pretty gory action at times. But if you can take it, this will likely come out near the top of your list. For me, it's one of my very rare 10s, on level with Psycho-Pass and Brotherhood, while ranking a single point above the already mentioned and amazing Cowboy Bebop.